As the trade deadline inches closer and closer for the Toronto Blue Jays, the biggest question Toronto Blue Jays fans have is what Ross Atkins is going to do at this trade deadline. And a couple of new reports have surfaced from notable reporters hinting at what their plan could be. So I'm going to break that down in this episode of Jays Digest, as well as a recent article that was posted by a writer hinting at a potential blockbuster trade between the Chicago Cubs and the Toronto Blue Jays involving one of the Blue Jays superstars. So to break all that down in this episode, before we do, if you're a part of the 70 to 80% who are not subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It would mean the world to Peter and myself, as now we're on the road to 13,000 subscribers and we make daily Jays videos. But without further ado, let's dive right into it. We have a lot to discuss today, and some very interesting reports have come out. We have an article of the blockbuster trade with Vladdy, but we're going to start with just kind of where the Blue Jays are currently looking back at the wild card. A couple of Blue Jays writers and reporters have hinted at what their plan could be going forward if they continue to tread water the way they have. Obviously, we know that they won 4 out of 5 games coming into yesterday's game where they lost against the Brewers. And you see this from Jon Morosi, and this was before yesterday's loss. He said the Blue Jays are 9-4 since the May 26th walk-off defeat in Detroit. They're only 2 games out of a playoff spot. They're now 3 games because this was before yesterday's loss. Is the roster flawed? Sure, but with each win, it becomes more likely that the core remains intact beyond the trade deadline. And that's kind of the thing that we're going to be discussing today, is whether or not the core will be able to stay intact. And I think if the Blue Jays continue to play the way that they've been playing for the past week or two, it's going to be a very tough sell for the Toronto Blue Jays to sell off their best players. And again, Jon Morosi is saying this. He's saying he thinks the core is going to stay intact, which is a very interesting thing because the biggest talk has been about, potentially Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being traded, Bo Bichette being traded. But then they go out and they have a couple stretch of games over the last couple weeks where they were really performing well, and they've been doing exactly what they need to do if they want to compete for a wild card spot. And now they're only 3 games back. They're 2 games under 500. And obviously, depending how the next couple of games go and the next couple of weeks go, that will be the biggest deciding factor. But that's what Jon Morosi tweeted. And I also want to show you this. This was from literally an hour ago this afternoon. Ben Nicholson-Smith, he always tweets things with insight. He's obviously probably, him and Shai Davidi are the most tuned in insiders, but I trust Ben a bit more. He said, if the Blue Jays win or lose a lot, their deadline decision will be easy. If they stay where they are right now, which is 2 games under 500, around 19.1% playoff odds, 3 games back of a wild card, that decision becomes harder. But if they're 3 games back of the playoffs, Ben Nicholson-Smith does not see them selling. And this is the interesting thing that I kind of want to discuss today is it's going to be very difficult for the Toronto Blue Jays to convince themselves to sell with the new Rogers Center renovations and all these things. If they're within, I've been saying this now for a couple weeks since the report first came out, if they're within 5 games of a playoff spot or of a wild card spot, I can see them convincing themselves to stay and stick with this core, whether that's Bo Bichette, whether that's Vladdy, whoever it is. And that's what it seems like their goal is going to be over the next few weeks, going to be deciding that. But again, a couple of these reports are hinting at the fact that they might keep their core. You had Ben Nicholson-Smith say they're probably going to keep their core. You had Jon Morosi say they're going to be keeping their core. So if they are close, then they're going to keep their core. And the question is that a good decision? And again, you can see the full quote by Ben Nicholson-Smith here. I don't know exactly where I stand on this. I think ultimately, if you're within a couple games of the playoff spot, I'd like to see them maybe do some retooling in the sense of trade a couple of their rentals while also getting some assets back that will help them in the future. You have guys like Jimmy Garcia, Yusei Kikuchi that are on the expiring contracts of their deals. You have Chris Bassett who has a couple of years left, 1 year after this, a free agent after 2025. I don't think they're going to trade Yusei Kikuchi. They could trade, even a guy like Jordan Romano, who you wouldn't trade the Canadian Markham kid, but it's possible that they look to trade off some of the guys that have not, they've been performing well, but that are free agents at the end of the year, specifically Jimmy Garcia, because then you're looking to, and using Kikuchi that is, because then you're looking to retool, and you're not fully rebuilding, you're still keeping your team competitive, while also getting younger, lining up with a timeline more of whoever they do decide to keep, which I assume is going to be building around guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Obviously, I assume they're going to keep him, even though we're going to be discussing a trade now in a second. So I think they go the retooling route if they decide to sell, and I think that's what most fans are saying. That's what most reporters are saying, and I think that's ultimately the best decision for the Toronto Blue Jays, is to maybe retool, or, as much as it hates me to say it, if they're within the wild card spot and they're a game or 2 back, is this team World Series caliber? Probably not. But to see them potentially, make a playoff push, the Toronto Blue Jays front office is not going to deny that, because they get more revenue. And now every team, like Peter and I discussed yesterday, every team in baseball, or most teams, are really not very good. This has been one of the worst years for overall team success. You have a few teams that are great: the Orioles, the Yankees, the Braves, the Dodgers. even the Guardians. But in general, a lot of the teams in the league are, middling 500 teams, maybe under 500, a couple games over 500. We have the Twins, the third wildcard spot. They're now only 2 to 3 games above 500 after flaring out. And the positions are so open for the Blue Jays to make the playoffs, that's going to be very hard to convince them to sell. But if they are willing to sell, an article came out, and we heard the report, if you didn't, you can check out our video from a couple days ago, about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and the Cubs. The Cubs are linked to Vladdy. They're pursuing Vladdy. At least they've had internal discussions about it. And this article dropped saying a Cubs-Blue Jays trade to send Vladdy into the NL Central pennant race. And I wanted to get your guys' opinion on this because this is a bit of an interesting trade, and I don't hate it. So this is the trade here. You can see a Cubs-Blue Jays trade that gives Chicago the power hitter of their dreams. And Vladdy's been performing very well, and I want to preface this by saying I do not think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. gets traded. I think he gets extended, and I think he's a part of the core going forward. But if they are looking to trade him at this year's deadline, he's sending him. You're getting back Christopher Morel, Michael Arias, Brennan Davis, and Pinago. So Yohandrick Pinago is a very interesting guy as well. He's one of the later prospects, but you can look at a few of these guys. If you're unfamiliar with them, I'll dive into them a little bit. The article does it as well. So let's actually start with Christopher Morel. And most Jays fans should be familiar with Morel. He had a very good season last year. This season, he's been a little bit more iffy. You can look at his stats. He has an OPS plus of 99, so he's about league average. He has 12 home runs, 46 hits, an on-base percentage of 315. Current slugging percentage is 388. He's only 24 years old, hitting 12 home runs. That's a pretty good clip for a guy that it would be headlining a Vladdy package. But you were talking about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. here, and it's just so hard to trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And again, Christopher Morel, if you're unfamiliar with him, you can go over him a little bit. Serious potential the past few years, had a great season last year, and this year is a down year by his standards, but he's under contract for the foreseeable future, and that's what you're trading. If you don't think you can re-sign Vladdy, you'll be trading. You're getting a young 24-year-old under control along with 3 top-ish prospects. If you're unfamiliar with the other guys, you get a top 10 prospect in Arias, and then you get Brennan Davis, who is a potential outfielder in the future who has great power. So, you're getting a very, very good package here. You're getting a guy who can slide into your team now. You're getting a top 10 prospect. You're getting a top 30 prospect. You're getting an outfielder who is potentially in Brennan Davis, hit for some power. And you're also getting, of course, Yohandrick Pinago. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I don't like it necessarily because, again, you're giving up Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who has an OPS plus this year of 131. He has 7 home runs, 30 RBIs, on-base percentage approaching 400. He's been as good as advertised coming into the year, and he obviously started off super slow, but when you're getting a guy like Vladdy, or you're trading a guy like Vladdy, if this is your headliner, you'd probably want someone a little bit better, even though it's the best package that we've seen so far, because if you rewind a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now, before Vladdy had that big stretch, there were proposed trades by the same writers for Vladdy for a top 15 prospect in a system, not in the MLB, barely a top 100 prospect, the 90th ranked prospect, and cash for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., which definitely would not be enough and would not satisfy it. So it's good that the values are getting more and more realistic, but will the Blue Jays trade Vladdy? I highly doubt it. I think he's going to be a part of their core going forward. And if they do trade him, I don't mind this package, but I personally wouldn't do it anyway, especially where, again, they're competing for a wild card spot. And let me know in the comments, what do you consider a package like this? Because I don't hate it. I just don't think the Jays should trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now, if you swap Bo Bichette for this package, if you made it this far in the video, leave in the comments. If you swap Vladdy with Bo, would you do the deal? Let me know down below. But that'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you want to check out a video from yesterday, click on your screen now, and we will see you tomorrow or later today. Who knows?